You are listening to Mindset and Metabolism Mastery, episode 14. Last year, my family and I moved to Costa Rica. And before you hate on me, I want to share with you 4 key principles that I've learned during my time abroad that have massively changed how I focus on my metabolic health. Let's dive in. Welcome to Mindset and Metabolism Mastery, a show for women who are tired of feeling hopeless, defeated, and frustrated with their bodies and want to have more energy to show up every day as the best version of themselves. I'm holistic nutrition consultant Shannon Hagel, and I can help you reprogram your brain to create bulletproof consistency with ease and address your personal hormonal imbalances that are leading to weight gain. Life can feel a whole lot better with a body you love, delicious food, and a little wine. And I'm here to help you get there. Ready to lose weight and feel amazing in your body? Let's dive in. Welcome, friends. Usually on this podcast, I am focused on teaching the physical, biological reasons things are happening in your body, or the psychological neuroscience behind your behaviors. But today, I'm going to be getting a little bit personal. But don't worry, I'm still going to be getting a bit sciencey for my fellow info nerds. So back in August, my husband and I and our kids and our dog, we all moved to Costa Rica. Now, before you get too excited for me, it's not a permanent move. We're here for a year. We are now 6 months into our year abroad, and I've noticed some massive shifts in my metabolic health, my appetite, my nervous system regulation, and my anxiety. So today, I want to share with you my biggest lessons that I've learned as a holistic nutritionist and hormone expert from 6 months of living near a blue zone, how I plan to bring some of these lessons back home with me. And maybe it'll inspire you to incorporate some of these principles into your life, no matter where you live. So about a year ago, we made the decision to sell our forever home and build a new home in a new community in Canada that is closer to the mountains. Now, this was a super difficult decision for us. I thought that the house we lived in, the community that we lived in, would be where my grandkids came to visit. But our reasons for loving this community really had started to shift. I have 2 neurodivergent kids, one that has really high needs. And the school system in our area, although really great, was not so great at accommodating our little kiddo that just needed that extra support. Also, we started to see changes in the community itself. There seemed to just be this vibration of drama that just kept building. And it got really difficult to protect my energy, especially with my own ADHD diagnosis. I get easily overwhelmed. So after several years of seeing this struggle increase in our community, we made the decision to move closer to where we feel the most calm, most present, and peaceful, closer to the mountains. But since we're building, the house won't be ready until summer 2024. So that meant having to rent a house with 2 young kids, one who needs to be near a school who can accommodate her dual diagnosis, plus a dog. Not so easy to find. For the last decade, anytime life got to be a little too much, my husband and I would joke about leaving everything behind and moving to Costa Rica. So we decided renting somewhere beautiful and warm sounded a whole lot better than renting somewhere that has 8 months of winter. So we packed up our things and took off. Now we're about halfway through our adventure. I can clearly see some massive positive changes, and it's really shifted how I focus on my metabolic health. And these shifts didn't come from putting in more effort and time or doing more things. A lot of the time, we think that we need to do something in order to create a positive change. We want to action our way out of the problem. But usually a big piece that people miss, and the reason why they struggle so much to see their efforts pay off, is that before we add anything, we need to be subtracting. We actually need to be removing more of the things that are causing our imbalances in the first place. If we just keep adding more and more action items to our list, we don't actually get rid of the problem. We're just trying to band-aid it. Even when you're choosing natural and healthy remedies, if you don't remove the offending factors, it's still just a band-aid. So the biggest positive change I've noticed over the last 6 months is my nervous system regulation. My whole body feels calmer, less triggered. I hate that word, but for lack of a better one, less triggered, less stress, less anxiety. So the biggest shift I've seen since moving to Costa Rica is my HRV results. Now, this is your heart rate variability. So the variation in time between your heartbeats. Generally, a higher HRV means a more resilient nervous system. It means that your body is better able to recover, and it's a sign of a healthy heart. A higher HRV occurs when the parasympathetic nervous system, so our rest and digest nervous system, is more dominant, which means that the body is in that state of relaxation and recovery more of the time. This is the nervous system that we are meant to be in for the majority of our day. Now, a lower HRV indicates that the sympathetic nervous system is more dominant, which means the body is stressed out. It's in fight or flight. We're only supposed to be in this fight or flight state in acute situations, but many of us live in this state all day, every day, myself included. Now, nobody in my life would probably ever describe me as chill. I'm a pretty type A type of personality. I have a tendency to take on too much. So my HRV has consistently been very low, which is incredibly frustrating when you're an otherwise healthy person. When you work out, you eat healthy, you take your supplements, you've been working on reducing your alcohol intake, you've been avoiding unnecessary medications, even actively trying to reduce your stress. So my low HRV has been my nemesis, like a scarlet letter. For over a year, I've been working really hard to increase my HRV and the health of my nervous system. And very, very slowly, I have managed to increase it. But one thing that I noticed almost immediately after moving to Costa Rica was a jump in my HRV. My nervous system was suddenly not constantly in this fight or flight mode. Now, this is super critical when we're talking about hormonal balance and metabolic health, because if you're constantly in a fight or flight mode, your body will be storing stress fat right around that midsection. Now, last week, I did an entire episode on stress fat. So if you want to know more about how this actually happens, especially for women, make sure you check out episode 13. Now, since moving to Costa Rica and seeing a jump in my HRV, my body's not been constantly fighting to be in this stress fat storage mode. So you know what becomes a whole lot easier? Maintaining my weight. I've not weighed myself since July. But I recently had a 5-day trip to Toronto, and it's not exactly shorts weather there right now. So I had one pair of very unstretchy, very unforgiving jeans that I haven't worn since last year. This was the only pair of pants that I brought with me to Costa Rica. And they fit, no problem. Previously, I would have thought I needed to weigh myself weekly or even monthly to make sure that I was maintaining my weight, that I wasn't slowly shifting off track. But when your body is primarily in a rest and digest state, you don't have to work so hard to keep it off. So there are 4 lessons that I've really learned from these 6 months in Costa Rica that I think have contributed significantly to this improvement in my nervous system and my metabolic health. So the first lesson is shrink your world in order to expand it. Now, I love my friends and family back home. But one thing that really surprised me when I moved here was not the people that I missed. I knew that I would greatly miss many of my favorite humans. What surprised me the most was the people that I didn't miss. People that I spent a lot of time with because I felt like I needed to, or I wasn't even really thinking about it. It's just what we did. And stepping back into a world where we knew no one, we were really intentional when we moved here about not filling our time with just bodies. We were really intentional about who we spent our time with outside of our immediate family. And it's made me realize how much I was really buffering with relationships with other humans, with filling my time full of responsibilities and tasks and relationships that maybe really weren't serving me. We also saw this same kind of pattern show up with our kids' school activities. They do things a little bit differently here. So the after school activities happen right after school. And so rather than picking our kids up from school, racing home to eat dinner, and then racing off to the next rehearsal or practice, the kids have all their after school activities right at the school. So we pick them up at 4:15 and everyone is done for the evening. We have chill time, we have family time. It's not a rush to make dinner. And it really made me think about how we just fill all of our time full of these responsibilities that are actually not required of us. So what or who are you filling your time with that is not actually making your life better? The second lesson I've learned is reduce stimulation. One of the things that massively impacts your nervous system is information. So sound, touch, sight, smell, all of our senses are constantly feeding information to the brain, taking in everything around us. Our brains were not meant to deal with the amount of stimulation that's in our worlds anymore. Our nervous system has information overload. We're meant to be a little bit bored every now and then. We're meant to have these moments that are quiet and calm, that allow our brain and nervous system to kind of just catch up. And so being in Costa Rica, a couple of changes happened. We stopped watching TV, not because I don't love me some Netflix, don't get me wrong, but because of the place that we're living in is completely tiled. We have one television and it's right next to our son's room. By the time the kids go to bed, we don't want to turn the TV on because we don't want the noise to keep them up. So we just haven't been watching as much Netflix and other streaming services like we used to. We're not getting that light stimulation in the late evenings. We're also outside way more. There's no malls, there's no movie theaters here. There's really nothing to do that's not the pool or the beach. So all of our activities are really outside in nature. We're not constantly stimulated by things to buy and lights and sounds being blasted at us from an outside source. We also don't have constant connection. So our cell phones don't work here. We need to be connected to Wi-Fi in order to receive any phone calls or emails, anything like that. So when I'm in my house, I'm connected. But the second I leave my front step, I have no connection to the internet. This has been like life-changing for me. We don't realize how much that constant connection actually plays into our anxiety, plays into this overstimulation where our nervous system just cannot regulate itself. Now, rewinding back to the 80s where you could only get a hold of someone on their landline might not be where you want to go back to, but really evaluating how you are managing people's access to you is something to really consider. People not having constant access to me whenever they so choose has allowed me to be so much more present in where I'm at in that moment with the people that I'm with. The third lesson has been slow the fuck down. We make everything such an emergency in North America. Right? Nothing's an emergency. People here are so much more laid back. They don't make everything a catastrophe. They don't make things a big deal. And because of that, they're able to be calmer throughout the day, more present. They're more concerned about today than they are about tomorrow. It is a slower paced life when you're not constantly worried about the future. One really clear example of this for me, and it makes me laugh all the time, is the way that people drive here. We will be driving down the road, trying to get the kids to school, not so worried about being on time anymore. That's something that took me about 6 months to let go of. But in the middle of the road, two cars passing each other, going opposite directions, will suddenly stop because they know each other. And they'll roll down their windows and they'll have a full-on 3 to 5 minute conversation catching up with their friend. Neither of them caring at all that there's a line of cars behind them. Now, in North America, people would lose their minds. But everyone just accepts this as normal. Totally fine. Not disrespectful to anyone else's time at all because no one's in a hurry. The priority is people being connected and present over getting to where they need to go by a specific time. And the fourth lesson that I've learned is simplify. We make our worlds so complicated. I already pointed out all the after-school activities and all the other projects and responsibilities that we take on. But then there's the food. We don't have access to whatever food we want whenever we want here. The diet is much plainer than what we're used to. A lot of people might see that as a really bad thing. And for sure, being a foodie, I love good food. But there are lots of positives with not having access to whatever you want, whenever you want. It makes it a whole lot easier to not overeat, to not be tempted by all the things because we don't have that stimulation right in front of us. We don't have that option. So the decision's already made for you. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy the food that we eat, but it is certainly more simple. We also have way less stuff in our house. We moved here with a few suitcases. So one of my biggest frustrations when I lived back in Canada was the constant clutter all over our house, feeling like I could never catch up, feeling like so much of my time and energy had to go to tidying and cleaning nonstop. But having very few things has made that so easy and simple. There's nothing to tidy. There's nothing to put away. And not only is that so lovely, but it also has made my life so less complicated. I have so much more time to do other things, to cook a healthy meal, to play a game with my kids, because I don't have all the tidying to do all of the time. We really create a world for ourselves that creates problems that weren't there before. So if you're feeling overwhelmed in your life, like you don't have the time, the capacity, the ability to actually prioritize yourself and your health and the things that you want to do in order to get the results that you want, really taking a look at how you are creating these problems in your life that don't actually have to be there. Now, I am definitely very aware that it will be harder for me to bring some of these lessons home with me because I will need to choose them. They're not just happening naturally around me, but it still is a choice. As our world evolves, we get access to things that are really positive, that make our life easier. And these things also have a negative connotation too. They also impact our lives negatively as well. So we really have to take responsibility for managing and regulating our own access to these things, because it's actually not good for us. It's not good for our nervous system to constantly be stimulated and connected all of the time. Constantly having access to endlessly pleasurable and stimulating foods whenever you want makes it a whole lot more easy to say no or to not overeat. You need to be able to regulate your own access to these things. Constantly being connected to information and stimuli and other humans never lets your nervous system settle and decompress, pushing you into this fight or flight state that's going to be driving up your stress fat response. We need to learn to regulate our access to these wonderful tools that we have, because too much of anything is not a good thing. So while we're incredibly lucky to have access to all the things that we do, there are negatives that come with it. And we cannot expect our nervous systems to be able to handle the level of stimulation that it gets now, right? Even think about 30 years ago, it didn't have the same level of stimulation that is in our lives. You cannot expect your metabolism to not be impacted by your increased stress response. You cannot expect your body to be able to function the way you want it to and not be willing to give your body what it needs, and more importantly, protect it from the things that are causing this dysregulation and harm in the first place. So I invite you to pick one of these lessons that I've learned from my time in Costa Rica and see where in your life you can apply just a little bit of it. You don't have to move to a foreign country to get these results, and you don't have to live in a yurt. But how can you apply some of these principles to your life right now to make your life more manageable, to make your life easier, to make it more simple, and to give your nervous system a little bit of a break? When you step back and simplify, slow down, reduce stimulation, or shrink your world, I promise you, you will have to put way less time and effort into getting the results that you actually want. I will see you in next week's episode. You have a beautiful rest of your day.
If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to worry about missing an episode, you can follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you could share the podcast with others who you think might benefit from it, and leave a rating and review to let me know what you think. It doesn't have to be a 5-star rating, although I sure hope that you love the show. I want your honest feedback so I can create an awesome podcast that provides tons of value. Visit www.thrivefromtheinside.com/podcast launch for step-by-step instructions on how to follow, rate, and review. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Mindset and Metabolism Mastery. If you want to learn more about balancing your hormones, repairing your metabolism, and losing weight with empowerment and ease, visit www.thrivefromtheinside.com. I'll see you next time.